they really do have the ability to appeal on very conservative issues, they choose not to. They choose to support white supremacy. They choose to go to the far right. They choose to do those things that actually isolate the majority of what Texas looks like. Just to be clear, GOP, I know you know this, but maybe the rest of the country doesn't know this, that Texas is a majority-minority state. It's time to start to pass policies that will respect each and every Texan instead of a select few.
Hi again, everybody. Everything is bigger in Texas, including the state's lurch to the far right, with a wave of new laws now going into effect. About this phenomenon, Dan Balz of the Washington Post writes this, quote, Texas is an example of the balkanization of the country as red and blue states push further and further apart in the policies they embrace and enact. No state of note, however, has gone as far in one direction as Texas. In that way, it is a model for those who cheer those policies. Whether it becomes a political object lesson is now the question. So let's examine today's Republican priorities, with Texas leading the way. Those new Texas policies include the most restrictive abortion law in the country, outlawing abortions after 6 weeks with no exceptions for rape or incest, and where fellow citizens can receive a $10,000 bounty for turning in anyone who performs or aids and abets an abortion. There's the law allowing any Texan, and we mean any Texan, above the age of 21 to carry a handgun in public without training and without a license. Texas also enacted a law that limits school discussions on our country's history regarding race and racism. There's a new law requiring professional sports teams to play the national anthem at home games. And about that restrictive voting measure, which now bans 24-hour and drive-through voting, empowers partisan poll watchers, and restricts voting by mail, it will soon become law. While carving out space as the nation's most anti-choice governor, Texas's Greg Abbott cannot lay claim to being pro-life. No, not by a long shot. The Texas governor's reckless disregard for the health of his citizens is decidedly pro-disease and death indifferent for those living in Texas, including that state's children. While asking for help in his state's overflowing ICUs, Abbott is stridently opposed to life-saving measures like vaccine and mask mandates. And that's even as the virus surges in Texas schools, turning Texas children into the latest victims of Abbott's anti-science worldview. Texas Tribune writes this, quote, from August 23rd to August 29th, there were more than 27,000 new positive COVID cases among students in Texas public schools. That's according to the Texas Department of State Health Services, making it the biggest one-week increase in the entire pandemic. The state reports nearly 52,000 cases among students and 13,000 among staff since the school year began. The rising case number is forcing at least 45 school districts to temporarily stop in-person classes. In fact, one district in Central Texas closed its schools until after the Labor Day weekend, after 2 teachers died of COVID within a week of each other. All of this adding up to a state whose governing policies don't match the will of its people. According to a new survey from the Texas Politics Project at the University of Texas at Austin, for the first time in its polling history, a majority of Texans say that the state is on the wrong track, a position echoed in an editorial by the Austin American-Statesman, which reads, quote, here, Abbott outflanking his right-wing rivals in next year's gubernatorial primary has become more important than serving the needs, even protecting the lives of all Texans. Here, self-governance is not about serving the good of the community, but bolstering the ability of certain individuals to impose their will on others. Governing for the good of the majority isn't rocket science. It's the whole idea of a democracy, in fact. Too bad our governor still doesn't see that. The Texas Republican Party serving up a buffet of red meat for its base is where we start this hour with some